we are also going to begin a process of creating a video for Southern Arizona and Arizona mining and tell a story of our industry right here. And SABC is going to collaborate with Jim and our mining partners to try to let people see the great attitude and the great opportunities that are available to us here. We have a brief agenda, and Congressman is going to give us an update of what he thinks are issues and what he's been working on. And then we're just going to open this up. There's nothing formal about this, okay? So you can loosen your ties and relax, and because this is a conversation about the issues that are important to our industry, whether it's environmental, permitting, so-called taxes that are being discussed that we need to address. But anyway, the important part of this is for us to have a chance to communicate. And frankly, you don't get many opportunities like this where we get up to 3 hours of his time to really share what's going on. If you have to leave early, and I understand, please feel free. Nobody's going to take away your toys. So thank you all for being here. Congressman, please.
Thanks, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Okay, my wife tells me I'm pretty obnoxiously loud. What I thought I'd do is I'd kind of give you kind of an overlay of several of the projects that are occurring and give you kind of an idea of how we've tried to organize this congressional 2 years, okay? So last year I was elected as the Western Caucus Chair, and we had an agenda item. I'm also the chair of the Subcommittee on Energy and Minerals, and I'm the Vice Chair of Interior on Government Oversight. So almost all the things with energy and minerals are going through my pocket when it comes to the House, okay? And we positioned ourselves exactly for that, okay? I'm going to start with the Western Caucus because it's very important about what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a cohesive body that understands where we need to head and understands our issue. So this is what we thought would be our teaching moment, okay? Realizing that there are more votes east of the Mississippi than there are west of the Mississippi. They don't get what we have to go through. So when I took over, we had about 40 members. We're now 74, okay? And is extremely active. We've already had Ryan Zinke in, we've had Purdue in, we've had Pruitt in, we'll be having Perry in, and we've also had administration officials for coordination, okay? So what we're trying to do is not step on everybody's foot and get the maximum done in the shortest amount of time, okay? Some things we're going to have to take at a longer period of time by looking at the budgetary impact, by utilizing the budget, where we say no money can be utilized for the following rule, and then catch it next year, okay? There are other things we'll be able to take away right away, and there are things that the administration will be able to pocket through executive orders. So know how that is working. Number two is, sometimes it's not good for me to carry a bill being from a western state. Sometimes somebody from Georgia should be the person to carry that, because then if they're pushing that bill through, I'm one of the wolves waiting in the sidelines, waiting to bite some heads off. So we got to get better at our strategy of going from point A to the finish line, okay? So those are some of the things I also want to share with you. In energy and minerals, one of the things we've been trying to do along with Western Caucus is get things off the ground. We got to get things off the ground, and there are things that are critical at this point in time. So one of the people I'm going to ask you to start looking at is a guy by the name who has been in USGS by the name of Ned Mamula. And what he's done is choreographed all the minerals, aggregates, all the minerals we use from copper all the way across the board, what we're importing, what is available, what we have, and what we're not doing so that we're self-supportive, okay? This is really important right now. So the story I'm going to tell you first is what happened for me this August. So I went with Rob Bishop to Europe to see Germany, Lithuania, and Norway. And the reason they were picked was because of their energy issues. Now, Germany is all alternative energy. They're going to rely on the Russian bear for all their gas, for their baseload energy. Lithuania has been determined 100% of their energy by the Russian bear, and they want nothing to do with it. And they've actually put a big infrastructure in liquefied natural gas. In fact, this little country is now over 70% self-sufficient to the world on liquefied natural gas. The first delivery of United States liquefied gas comes in next week to their port. This is amazing what this little country has done. And to see what we've got as energy resources in this country along with our minerals is incredible. And Norway is somewhere in between. We tag team that with 17 offices, the first time that a Codell utilizing travel inside the United States in the last 20 years with 17 offices, 5 direct members, most of their chief of staffs from the 17, and also their LDs for mineral resources. Went up to Alaska. We took them up to the North Slope. It was 15 degrees with the wind chill. That was kind of brutal to a bunch of staffers who didn't realize what was coming their way. We looked at mining. We looked at the gold mine up there, the Fort Knox gold mine, and some of the process problems that they actually had. The water, some of the rules with water and public lands, as well as forest. So we have a lot of things happening and moving through, okay? Last but not least, and then we can kind of go through the whole litany that you want to go through, is what's coming our way. Some of the things are going to be done by executive order through the Interior Department, through the President's secretaries. Some are going to be done in the budgetary process, and some are going to hopefully have some process through actual policy. Okay. Some of these are going to be a little bit more urgent. You're going to see a little bit more take from a place like Minnesota. And I want to explain that. They're setting up a video so you can actually see this video. For those that are not familiar with upstate Minnesota, in the Antiquities application, back to Teddy Roosevelt, they had the boundary waters. I think everybody's heard of the boundary waters. Well, and there was a buffer area. And then right below it was a designation for mining where the iron ore range is, where most of the iron was mined for World War II, and also twin metals. And as President Obama walked out of the office, literally last year, earlier this year, he signed away a waiver to remove that off of the impound list. So we were asked to go up on behalf of Rick Nolan, who's a Democrat, and Tom Emers, who's a Republican, to bring a face to this problem. We got to make sure that we save this mine from going down. We actually held town hall meetings, and the people asked me, what could we do? Well, they brought a film crew. I wanted them to tell their story. And the story is so provocative that the ranking member, Alan Lowenthal from Long Beach, California, who's some of you know him, he's pretty anti-mining, okay? And Don Breyer from Virginia, who's very anti-mining, were so shaken by what was told of them that they are coming out here this fall for us to show them how mining's done. Seriously, the conversation was, you shook our core as to what's being done because it's nowhere what we've been told. And so I think this is the pinnacle of how we can gather back our industry and save this country. Because mining is everything. This is where good paying jobs are. This is how you base things. If you want cell phones, you want new technology, you got to have mining. You got to have all this. You want transmission, you want green energy, you got to have mining. From copper to manganese to iron to you name it, you got to have it. It's not if, you got to have it. And it's a national security issue all the way across the board. The last issue I want to talk about is, and make sure it's on the planning stage, is infrastructure. The President has, and Congress has talked about, putting an infrastructure package that's vibrant. part of the problem is going to be money, okay? And we can talk about that because we're going to have to go find and teach members of Congress that this money is sitting there, okay? We just got to get them through a new way of thinking. And then number two is making sure that our projects are on that list. And in order to accomplish that, we've got to have the aggregate, we got to have the cement, we got to have the oil base, we got to have all of this if we're going to make America great again in regards to our infrastructure. So those are all on the table, okay? And what I thought I would do is, that's a taste of what's going on. How about we open up conversation by asking questions?
Hand me your computer and I'll give it to Dennis.
Yeah.
Let's get that thing. Do you know what we're looking for?
Yeah, I'll pull it. That one right there.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I got to come around anyway.
And they're doing me a favor, so you can actually see this video. Well, what's interesting about videos is it's attracting a lot of young people, believe it or not. I tell you what, you give a young kid your thesis paper, they're not going to read it. I'm going to tell you that right now. It doesn't work. But this video, kids are watching it 5 and 6 times. They want to know more about it. So they're hungry to learn about that. And they'll eventually read your thesis paper if they've seen enough on visual aspects to get them intoxicated with the issue. So this is also a good foray in regards to getting things done. If you haven't guessed, I'm very impatient. I do not like not getting things done. I see a start, I see a body, I see a conclusion. If I don't, the dentist gets very frustrated. And if I get very frustrated, the bureaucrats pay a penalty. It's pulling teeth without any anesthesia. So there's ways of getting your stuff done in Congress. So, but while they're doing that, let's open it up to where you want to take it. How does that sound?
I was going to ask if maybe somebody in the audience could bring up to talk about CERCLA and the scenario where it is. Kathy, do you want to?
I mean, we've all provided comments on CERCLA,
Right.
and now we're kind of waiting to
Yep.
hear. I saw a portion and read a portion about the hearings that you held, and,
Yep.
and some of the work that was done with Brett Park and the others that came up from Arizona, so we thought we were really well represented
Yep.
due to that. But one of the questions we've all had is there a chance? And we've heard a lot of different things about, is this going to be set aside and just not do anything? And that, I think, is almost more risky since we have such a nice environment right now for getting the kind of rules that we need. Or is this something that there's an opportunity to actually work through something that might be some common sense legislation, doing some good Samaritan kind of things, and being able to do some offsets and actually recognizing what we're required to do here?
Yeah, so we've had a nice conversation, and along with the testimony that you've given, we actually had a letter that went around Congress that had a number of signatures, and we wanted to make sure that we got it to Pruitt before we went on break, okay? There's a number of things that they're starting to look at. So let's step back and look at some of the onerous rules and regulations that were removed earlier this year using the Congressional Review Act, okay? Why this is really important is that if you take a rule out utilizing the Congressional Rules Act, what ends up happening, a block comes down, which means you can't go through that block. You're going to have to do something totally different than that rule, okay? That's what's so valuable about the Congressional Review Act in doing that. Now, there are 2 other rules that we're looking at. To give you an example, one of them is the withdrawal of the sage grouse issue. So one of the thought processes, just to let you know, is actually allow the rule to go all the way to fruition, introduce it into Congress, and have it removed by the CRA. Okay? Once again, it puts that impetus as a roadblock right there. And that's what Pruitt's looking at that application. From the committee is about ready to introduce a mining package that looks at Good Samaritan, also looks at the Darren LaHood bill, where it starts leveraging Good Samaritan dollars with outside groups in combination so that there's no liability associated with that. But Pruitt has told us that the CERCLA is not going forward in implementation in pounding on our minerals. So that I can tell you. It's just how they're going to do that is what they're worried about, okay? And you're seeing it also with Secretary Zinke on some of the monument issues, okay? They're going one by one or a couple at a time, looking at do they need to be modified, stay the same, whatever, okay? Did that help you address that?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments on CERCLA? Feel free to chime in, please, Dwayne.
Congressman, we actually met at EPA to talk about the fact that we believe that EPA is trying to implement the rule retroactively. And we talked to the administration about potentially coming out and putting that question forward. If the rule is truly being implemented as we believe it retroactively, then their analysis is incorrect.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the authority to be able to make this rule retroactive. It can only be prospectively as we move forward. And I think that this was an opportunity for the administration to step back and say, let's put this out as a supplemental and ask the question, is this being, what do people think about this rule being retroactive?
Mm-hmm.
And then come back with comments, and the comments will say they can't do it, and then they can go back. That means that the risk assessment that they did originally is incorrect because they're applying it retroactively, and that the analysis and ultimate analysis that they did is incorrect. Then they can go back and actually do the analysis and say there is no risk because we've got programs like the state of Arizona out there with their APP program that is protecting the environment, and all these facilities are protected and they aren't really needed. This rule can go away.
Right. And I don't think you're getting a beef from them. I think what they're trying to do is decide which way they want to go. I will tell you, out of everybody in the administration that we've had to work with, the easiest by far is Mr. Pruitt. If you haven't met Mr. Pruitt, start getting to know this cat. This guy is a smart attorney. He understands sometimes that you don't hold them, you fold them. Sometimes what you do is you move it forward. Sometimes you hold it back and he's collaborative. What I mean by that is he's willing to engage, to listen, okay? So irrespective of the outcome, they don't want this to go forward as is. They're just determining the right process.
Well, this would clearly give them a process
Yep.
that's legitimate, that they can make that determination if the rule isn't needed.
Right.
They can go away.
Well, some of the things that he also brought up was the Clean Power Rule in the waters of the U.S., okay? Because clearly the Supreme Court actually defined those aspects. First of all, in waters of the U.S., you had five different parts of five different rulings from the Supreme Court that defied the EPA from even going there. And Mr. Pruitt even acknowledges that. So to see this action by McCarthy during that time is an egregious overreach, okay? And it wasn't by itself, by the way. It was tied in with the Antiquities Act, particularly in this state on the Grand Canyon. That wasn't about protection of the Grand Canyon. That was a subsurface water grab, by the way, okay? So that's number one. Second was the Clean Power Rule, where the Supreme Court first time ever made the comment saying, listen, well, we're going to file an injunction against you, but you can't even start the rulemaking process. The first time that's ever happened in the Supreme Court's history, the very first time. So that tells you the makeup of where we've got to go with this, is that we've been impounded so much across the board, whether it be water, whether it be air, whether it be land, whether it be timber, whether it be critters, whether it be planning and NEPAs. We got to unfold this, and we got to do it in a short amount of time. Folks, I just don't tell you that. Here's the window. If we don't have this stuff done by February, it ain't happening. Okay, then you're going to go through another election process. And who knows what the heck that's going to be about, okay? We got to give people that opportunity. We got to give you that opportunity, okay, to see some of these things come to fruition. That's why we're running kind of helter-skelter with the Western Caucus and natural resources. And by the way, it's all coming from the House. The Senate's doing none of this. Okay? They still need to get some of their confirmations done. So the motivation at the committee level, the discussion, the bill development is all coming from the House. Okay? And I'm totally welcoming that. We're happy to take the work, as long as they don't give us any grief.
Anybody else?
Did that answer your question, by the way,
Yeah,
Dwayne?
please, Suzanne.
Okay.
Suzanne Kennedy, Arizona Mining Association. A couple of things. I appreciate your comments on Administrator Pruitt, and I know there have been some conversation about getting him out to Arizona at some point, which is certainly a visit we would welcome to set up some of those tours to our sites and so forth. But I know you had started talking about the mining package that's being put together, and I'd be interested in hearing what are some of the other elements that are under consideration, and if folks in the minority are still talking about the royalties and where some of those conversations stand.
I don't know that full package. I was made abreast of it when I was in Alaska, and Chairman Bishop wants us to sit down, the chairman of the subcommittees when we get back, to look it over and to put our 2 cents worth into it. So if you have any ideas that you'd like to see put into that package, we'd be very interested. Okay? The royalties I can tell you from Rob's point of view, is going nowhere. He's not going to budge, and that's why it means so much to start teaching some of these people the differences in that application. Okay.
To that end, Don, I'll let you talk about this. We were talking about time permitting. You're talking about revenue generating, and the long duration it takes. How much money we leaving on the table?
Yep.
Don, you want to address that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, boy, how many hours do you have? That's right. That's great. It's one of the things we see, and I'm a geologist by degree and been in the business for more than I care to think about right now, but when we look at the dollars that left this country because of the permitting timelines, not just for mines, but for exploration places. Without exploration, these mines don't get found and they don't get built. And so it's a catch-22 thing. And what we're seeing right now, and I've had the debate, AEMA is one of the service industry or service organizations for the mining industry out of Spokane. And some of the discussion that they have had has talked about, well, let's trade royalties for quicker timelines, right? And that's the wrong argument, in my opinion. And the reason is, you're going to give something up for something you should already have. So that's not a good point to start negotiations, in my opinion. And so when you look at the organizations that we deal with, like the Forest Service, the BLM's less owners than the Forest Service, but they don't care if they're making more money or not.
Yep.
They have no personal investment in seeing us succeed or fail. It's just another day at work for those guys. And so without timelines, without somebody holding their feet to the fire, the rest of it's all fluff. It's not going to work. And so, and what the government should realize is that when they delay those timelines, it only hurts revenue coming in the door. And if they understood the time value of money, which I don't believe they do.
They don't.
Not no personal here, but I don't believe overall the government realizes that the sooner these organizations get built, the sooner the tax revenue not only goes to the state, but the county and the federal government. And the longer that's delayed, it may look good on paper, but it costs everybody money, start to finish. And so what I would prefer to see is some of these government organizations, one, we're dealing with state of Arizona right now on some permits.
Right.
And they brought in some people out of industry who get it. And they have reorganized those business units, I'll call them, in the state. And they've been very reactive to our needs and to the idea that they run it more like a business. Unfortunately, the federal government hasn't gotten that memo. And so when you walk into the federal government's office to apply for anything, you're just a number. Get in line. I mean, and again, I'm moaning and complaining and stuff, but I've lived this for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I am in the worst situation now in the Coronado National Forest here in Arizona that I've ever seen. There's less common sense, there's less urgency to anything we do. And so I think the royalty thing's great. At some point, it might be a good discussion, but I don't think it's time for it now.
No.
I think we've got to see, we, mining industry and industry in general, needs to see something out of the government that responds to our needs and helps everybody, and then that royalty discussion could be had.
Well, a taglining along those aspects. So when we went to Europe, Alan Lowenthal continually asked about, because it was not just energy, there was also minerals involved, talking about their schematic about royalties. And he was quickly put into his place. So with Statoil from Norway, he was shaken, to be blunt with you, okay? Zinke's also a geologist. I don't know if you know that. Okay, so he is frustrated. So what he's trying to do is he's going more of a state approach. There are areas that actually morph that he thinks can be a region, but areas like Arizona should have their own individual. So does Pruitt think the same way, so that they're much more responsive to the area and have that nuance about how nimble the state is in working in collaboration with them. So he's trying there. Here's his problem. The confirmation process. Okay, so Ryan will tell you, his first day he rode into work on a horse. He had these grand plans, called a big meeting, sits at the table and starts going through a directive. And he realizes 20 minutes in, no one's taking notes. They don't want to, and they don't care to. So the next thing I'm going to tell you is going to be a little disturbing, okay? That means someone's head has to roll. It just did. I'm responsible for one of them. Ben Tuggle is no longer in Albuquerque because of me. He doesn't belong there. You do not defile the law without paying a consequence. Ryan Zinke helped do that. There were 54, 55 SESs that got reassigned and lost their job. Oh, and by the way, let me make something else really clear. The House actually implemented the Holman Rule. Why is the Holman Rule so important? I can go into the budget right now, and for any bureaucrat that does not do their job, I can take their pay stub to 0. I can make it hurt. Oh, that's what I'm coming to. I need to know, I need a list. And Zinke and Purdue have said the same thing. We need to know people that are not doing their job. They are there for customer service. They are there to facilitate and work with the states. No ifs, doubts about it. The problem is the Senate is slow, the administration is slow, and ethics is slow in getting these confirmations out. I mean, Zinke's got a skeletal crew. I've been working with Justice Department. Jeff Sessions wants to work on a number of these issues that we've got on Western issues. His problem is, Paul, I can't do it until I get more people. He's 205 confirmations short right now. 205 people. That's why there's a struggle with this is that some of this stuff, that's why I use the budget, saying, okay, I can go into this budget and say, line item 0 out. You can't use this for the implementation of this rule until they can get their people in place to hold it up. And they can't do that. Okay, there's a law. This is one of those things that once we get into something, we go book crazy. So there's a thing called the Anti-Deficiency Act. Everybody needs to know what this is. So where it started was in the late 1880s. The Defense Department started entering into contracts without consent of Congress. They were on the hook for paying these bills. And they said, no way. So now the rule of thumb is Congress must define in policy, in clear defined policy, and fund it to the infinite degree before a dime can be spent. You do otherwise, you lose your job. It's one of the few things you can actually lose your job in the administration with. It was done over and over from numerous administrations. We're about ready to unleash a case study on this. I don't need the Senate, to be honest with you. It can be a lawsuit directly from the House. It does not go to lower courts. It goes directly to the Supreme Court. Oh yeah, this gets really interesting. Oh yeah, this is something that Anton Scalia tried to teach us, and it finally got to us after his death. So if Congress doesn't have the policy, and they don't allocate specific money for that policy, they can't spend it. They can't even go there. They can't even put a mile on a car. So and the reason I tell you that is we need to start learning the rules that they're trying to play by. Because I think we're much better at working those rules than they are. They're 8 to 5. I don't know about you, but I'm 24/7.
To that, to expand a little bit, you talked about the Forest Service is presently under the umbrella of the Department of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
There was discussion about having it moved over to Interior.
Yep.
And number one, is that a reasonable scenario to expect to happen? And number two, this is comments that I've heard from other people, the President's administration, I don't know if they understand the importance of getting these people up in front and ready for confirmation. Or is the delay on the Senate, or where is the bottleneck on all these confirmations? Because part of the agencies don't have enough qualified staff, in fairness, to be able to follow through and do some of these things because of the lack of confirmations.
Well, they do have the people. The problem is there are people that don't think like this administration. They've been placed in by other administrations from Clinton, Bush, and Obama they do not want to do that. And so that's part of the directive problem. And you see what it takes to fire somebody, like look at the VA. So that's number one. Number two is Purdue and Zinke have both talked about it needs a natural fit for Forest Service to be under Interior because it's too interlocked. Okay, the problem is getting enough people to move it into the place from the administrative action. So it's going to take people. It's going to take people in justice to make that maneuver over, but they want to do it. Both of them have said they want to do it. What their time frame is, once again, I don't know. Last but not least, the bottleneck is ethics. Ethics is holding almost everybody up for nothing. Just to let you know what could have happened. Okay, so after the debacle, we're not going to discuss it, but the debacle on health care in the Senate, Rand Paul put a hold on all business in the Senate, which freed up their calendar to do confirmations. They're still trickling through. Still trickling through. What you're seeing is, and I'm sorry I got to lay the blame, but your problem is the Senate also. The Constitution does not require 60 votes for anything. It's ridiculous what we're seeing in the bottleneck in the Senate. They got to get their act together. And you know what? If it takes me calling them out, I'm going to do it. I'm going to share a story with you to show you how frustrating it is. We went through this healthcare debate, and we were told that it had to do with the parliamentarian on reconciliation, that this individual told us what was permissible. We thought, that's kind of odd. So we actually went to the parliamentarian in the Senate. You know what she said to us? You're the first people to come to talk to me. What I'm about to tell you is going to shock you. It had nothing to do with her. She was actually an appointee by Harry Reid. Her job is to advise the chair. Do you know who the chair is? Vice President Pence. If Vice President Pence wants to put anything on the table, he can. It takes 60 votes to overthrow his idea, to remove it. So it was completely the reversal. When Mitch McConnell was told about this, being there, you know what his comment was? Wow, So the difference between the House and the Senate is 6 years versus 2 years? How about the 17th Amendment? It explains it quite a bit. So we need to put the fire to the Senate. I'm not mincing words. I'm sorry. I handle myself in all their presence fine. Take me on.
I like the drill.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, the
Yeah,
Amiday
please.
bill, I think, and I probably mispronounced that, it was a
No, it's
representative
Amiday.
out of Nevada
Mhm.
that had some legislation, I understand it passed the House and was ready to go to the Senate for conference. Is there any update on that, or, because what his bill was, if I understand it correctly, was to set timelines for permitting, that sort of thing, both on the mining side and EISs?
Yeah. One of the things we wanted was managers, so that you're doing them simultaneously all the time with same time time limits. That if you didn't get it within that time frame, it's done. It's as passed. If you didn't get your stuff done on the agency side, it's sitting in the Senate. There's a whole bunch. There's 269 bills waiting on the Senate that have passed the House. Yeah, this has not been a slow House. I'm just going to tell you. You may disagree with some of the things that they do, okay? But they've been pretty busy. This will be the first year that we'll have all 12 appropriations bills done by the September 30th. We already did 4. We're doing the next 8 all in lock. We have to have all our amendments submitted by the 25th, this Friday. And we're going to have a free-for-all. So hopefully next year, we'll do it the right way, all 12, but as individuals. But I mean, at least we're getting that done.
Tom, is there anything in the aggregate business that we should be talking about? And any environmental issues or any legislative or regulatory issues that?
Cal Portland is, we're not just aggregates, we're also the cement plant. And we do have some issues, and I'd actually defer to Steve here about some of the cement plant. We have a cement plant just north of, or west of town, and we've got some issues, mainly with the regional haze.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let Steve talk about it because it makes me shake.
Well, the regional haze rulemaking was pretty well completed for everybody. And our cement plant in Reeda, kind of on the freeway from Phoenix to Tucson, we got wrapped up in that, even though all our modeling showed we had no impact. The Arizona state modeling showed we had no impact, and the EPA modeling showed we had no impact on visibility in national, I guess it's a national park now in Sonora. But nonetheless, they directed us, they just rolled us up into the rule and directed us to put in some extra pollution control equipment for NOx. And it's going to cost us about $1.5 million, which in government terms is not a lot, but to us it's a lot. And it's going to cost about $1 million a year to operate, but have no impact on visibility in the park. And we lost a lawsuit because the court deferred to the EPA, but we still have a pending action with the EPA that they've never acted on because they refused to make public their model that showed we had no impact. And we put in a petition for reconsideration, they've just refused to address that. And we're getting down to the time where we either need to buy that equipment, which has about an 8-month, 1-year lead time to engineer and install. It has to be up by the end of 18, or try to get the EPA to reconsider this rule. And we've had a lot of people that understand our story, both here in Arizona, from the AG's office and ADEQ, they're both backing us on it, but we've just gotten no traction from the EPA.
Do you have a contact at EPA that you talk to under Pruitt's administration?
I can get that.
Would you please? Because
That's
this is one of those things that, once again, they're very thin on the personnel that's actually been confirmed for this administration under the EPA. So there's a lot of problems about implementation. I think there would be a great way to actually, and Penny talked and tell me if I'm out of line, but this is going to be a comment in regards to NGS as well.
Yeah, we really just need to bring that to a conclusion one way or the other.
Well, his comment to us was that there should be a transparency for all science models in which we dictate rules. So that was Pruitt's comment directly to us in our caucus.
I met Mr. Pruitt back a while ago. He's pretty impressive.
He is. I would think we would be able to do that on a pretty quick notice. So let us know.
Appreciate that.
Okay. The more details you can give it to us on that, the better.
Okay.
Okay? Because both Western Caucus and Resources staff will go directly to him.
I guess that aside, the biggest thing for the construction industry is infrastructure. We've got plenty, unfortunately, we've got plenty of excess capacity right now. We've never really recovered from the recession. So we would really like to see some infrastructure spending again.
This is where we're going to have to direct Congress in regards to money. Okay, so for your information, I am actually pushing 2 big projects that are ready to rock and roll. Okay, one is Lower Santa Cruz, and the second one's I-11. Okay, we've asked the administration that there are things that can be done to actually model it, and why I'm picking them. Number one, I-11 currently follows a roadway that already has NEPA and EIS done. So this would be a golden opportunity to use a pilot program to show how you can streamline the NEPA process. So there should be no way we're spending the kind of money that we're having to do along that same roadway, as long as it's following in that same trajectory. Number 2 is, I want a fair wage for a fair job that's fair to the taxpayers. What I want to see is the prevailing wage be moved from the Department of Labor and Hourly Wages to the Bureau of Statistics. And the reason I'm saying that is in Southern Arizona, we had a rash over the last 2 years because they came to us of going out of business by the Department of Labor for miscalculating the prevailing wage. If you're a small business, I mean, it's almost impossible to try to figure this damn thing out, pardon my language. Okay? Bureau of Statistics does a very good job very transparently. Here's the savings, folks. So in 2008, the audit was done by the government, by GAO. I'm glad most of you are sitting down because their sampling all the way across the government was 100% fraudulent. So not one case was actually filed right. Their estimated overruns were $13.1 billion that year without the military.
That's real money.
And here's the deal. What I told the administration is, I don't want the money back. I want it to stay there and allow it to be utilized by the agency. That means that's 20% of a budget in the military, because you double that with the military. We just had this conversation on the floor, and it generated a huge backlash from East Coast labor unions. But all of a sudden what ended up happening is people like Mike Kelly, who's a union guy, goes back and says, wait a minute, whoa, you got this all wrong. All he's asking for is to have it calculated by the same parameters, just a different part of the wage index. So the same parameters that Ronald Reagan put under. So we've got some movement coming that way, okay? Mac Thornberry on the Defense Department, I mean, estimated, they looked at it and looked at almost $12 billion that they could use in military spending that would stay in their accounts. That's a great buffer when we're having this conversation right now with the military. So this is one headed that way. But that was my point in I-11. Make it a pilot. That magic thing is calling it a pilot and start utilizing it to reform the process. Okay? I'm going to go on for a minute here. So give me some leeway here. Okay? I've been watching Harry Reid. Harry Reid has been ingenious about what this cat has been doing when he's been in the Senate. He labels things as pilots and then passes the law so that he benefits from the pilot. Okay, so let me explain to you. So he had a problem. Las Vegas was landlocked. He had no more land. It was surrounded by BLM. So what does he do? There's a law. It requires the BLM to inventory land that's for disposal. So he does this pilot program called SNFLA, Southern Nevada Land Designation, whatever it is. He gets BLM to identify that land as disposable land. Then what he does is he goes, okay, the royalties should be split on multiple use at 50-50 split with the federal government. So 50% is going to go to the federal government. That next 50% we're going to divide up differently in Nevada. 15% goes to land grant university. Maybe U of A is one of those land grant universities, thinking outside the box here, okay? 15% K through 12 education, and 10% for local governments. Guess what he brought in the last 8 years? $5 billion to the state of Nevada. Why can't we have that? That's my whole point here, is it's just sitting there. That's what we're doing in the HERD Act, is now we're starting to isolate those public lands that are up for disposal and get them to start doing it. It's caused such a stir that now in La Paz County, the poorest county around, now has identified disposable land that they're going to put a solar complex on. It's a money generating big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, meeting with the whole entourage again for the 5th time in Prescott next week. That's why we need to regenerate that. But go back and find the money, okay? The permitting process. We're getting killed. We're leaving money on the table. For criminy sakes, time's money. They get it. Zinke gets it. The president gets it. That's one thing. This guy's a builder. Jiminy Christmas, guys. We ought to be building like crazy. But we got to do it in a stewardship type of manner. We got to show them where the money is. God forbid. Sorry for me to get on my soapbox, but.
Speaking of land grabs, the Antiquities Act, and recently, through the President's directive, Secretary Zinke put out comment period, and we were very familiar on the national monuments. Right down here in southern Arizona is, of course, the Iron Red Forest National Monument. And Nancy, would you like to please address that and talk about the lack of opportunity for ASARCO and mineral rights in that region?
Yeah, ASARCO provided comment on the monument designations, and we had a lot of support from the local industry. A lot of companies in this room commented on it too. ASARCO has several thousand acres of mining claims, valid existing claims that were locked up within the monument when that monument designation took place back in 2000. At the time, we were given assurances that we would be able to go in and prove out those claims at some point, and then as soon as the designation was announced, that ability was withdrawn. And commented extensively on it, took place, all the steps of the development of the resource management plan, and those claims are still locked up within the national monument. There is also about 30% of the national monument is state trust land, land that the state of Arizona can use for public education, but it's basically been rendered worthless because it's within the boundaries of that national monument. I've become concerned as these announcements are made by the Department of Interior that there's going to be no changes to the Grand Canyon, Prashant National Monument, several other national monuments. They've said there's not going to be any change to them. I know that the executive order said that the decision on this is the deadline for the Interior Department is tomorrow, I believe, August 24th. And so I'm just wondering what your take on that is. And in addition, I want to thank you for the Western Caucus support of that as well. You've been a real friend to our industry, and I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. So now I want to have you turn around because you segue right into this issue in Minnesota. Okay?
Hey, Rob.
Now, before they play it for you, let me explain to you. A withdrawal is almost identical to an antiquities designation. Okay? That's what President Obama did. Okay? Ryan's got cold feet here. Okay? That's why this baby right here has to go, because then we're going to piggyback on a success story here because they're impounding the same thing. State trust land, they're going to explain it to you. The people are going to explain it to you. So watch the video, and this was done by people back home, okay? And I asked them, keep it to 3 minutes. That way when I introduce it, I can introduce this, give it 30 seconds, play it, then it's them talking, not me, not some blowhard, and then give a summary. Okay, so watch it. This is great. This is what they did. They're gonna hit every issue you just brought up.
My brother and I started the business and we opened up in April of 1964. When we opened, there were 2 mines operating inside the city limits of Ely. Since they closed, the town has been declining.
I graduated from Ely in '67 with 158 students. We have like 32 in the graduating class this year.
The whole area was born with mining and logging. Tourism came later. And for many, many years, mining, logging, and tourism got along very well together.
Same picture.
So if you can imagine, at some point in history, going back into the early 1900s, that this had trucks and trains and crushers building America. We're just asking for people to take a look around and understand the before and after of what mining is. And now that we have this beauty, this is our drinking water here in Aurora, Minnesota. And we have some of the best water in the country.
We're not just fighting for copper nickel mining, we're fighting for all mining.
This withdrawal affects a swath of our region that is actually desirable mining area and possesses one of the richest mineral resources we have in the nation, if not the world.
The proposed mineral withdrawal would be the death sentence for our community. We need something to survive on. Mining offers us that future.
You people that don't believe in copper nickel mining, we're passing bags around. Throw your car keys, your cell phones, your iPads, your iPhones in the bag because they're all full of copper and nickel. Well, I'm here today sadly to say that Andrea had to bring this bag from Babbitt because the Zup store in Aurora had to close. You're not only starving us, figuratively speaking, you're starving the people of the Iron Range, literally speaking.
In this region, tourism is like a dessert. It looks good, it smells good, and it tastes good, but you can't live on it. Mining in northeast Minnesota, that's the meat and potatoes. That is what supports our families.
The withdrawal proposal risks the future of jobs for my members. This withdrawal would represent a loss of $1.5 billion in annual wages and more than $2.5 billion in annual economic production based on studies conducted by the University of Minnesota Duluth.
We have been mining for 130 years. We have the cleanest water and the cleanest air in the state. This is not an industry that destroys things, it's an industry that builds things. And that's what America's been all about.
We're being denied the American dream in these small communities. Rural Minnesota is eroding right before our eyes. We're not asking to circumvent any process. We're asking the ability to go through a process. We're asking for us to have a chance to meet the standards, both state and federal, and allow our families to go to work.
Don't take those lands away or you're going to lose our town, and that's devastating to us.
So the only change I asked them for at the very beginning of this, I asked them to put a rider. And basically what it says is, warning, the pictures you're about to view will cause you some problems. They're disturbing. And then when you look at it, it's like, there's nothing disturbing about this. So you're creating the stir, so people are going, so what's the big deal here? This is just a venue of what this group did. And that answers your question because they had 190,000 acres of state trust land that are valued at $3 billion. What was the number they used in there? 2-point-something billion? And that's rocking Minnesota. That's not Arizona, that's now Minnesota. Everybody you saw in that video, They're Democrats. They're Democrats. Okay? You have unions standing back in there as well. So if we can't win this one, we can't win anything. I got to get that one won first, because once I get Ryan to back off on this one, I'm coming back for yours. Saying, listen, there's no difference between Osarko and northern Minnesota. None. You can't do a takings, because you're taking a takings here. The promise was there was that access. The state has holdings, the private industry has holdings. You have to honor it. That was my conversation piece at the beginning of the year, where I was blasted. By saying Gosar wants to let energy companies and mining companies go into our national parks and ruin them. People don't get it.
And they've got a very loud voice, too.
It is, but
REI.
yep. But here's the point. Time's up. Okay, so let's backtrack to 2015. I actually moved an Indian water settlement up northwest. This is important because it's all about mining. Okay, so Freeport-McMoran owned the water, owned the land. So they decided to go into a negotiation with the tribe, the Wallapai tribe. Okay, they have every right to. Okay. Last time I looked in our Constitution, who's responsible for those contracts? Congress, right? Okay, so that's why I had to get involved. But the attorneys, they worked it out. It was amicable. I had 5 supervisors take me on. I had 5 of them, all 5 in Mojave County. Nobody else helped me. I'm the only guy that took them to task. Everything I said was dead ass true. And guess what? Everything has come to fruition that same way. But I had all the CBDs, I had all the water people screaming at me, I had all this, oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. No, it's not. But when you have private property, there is stuff that goes with that, and you got to honor that. You either believe in private property or you don't. That's why you see me with a big tiff with your congressman. He wants to call me out, I'll get after it. I'll come down and investigate him to find out if he's in collusion with CBD and everybody else. And you know what? I bet you I am. If you're going to make me walk a mile in my moccasins holding up to the law, I'm going to make you do the same damn thing. Enough's enough. And we're scared to start even taking on the critters, the Endangered Species Act. Well, let me give you another little bit of history. Mexican gray wolf. Do you know that Steve Pierce from New Mexico and myself actually pushed an amendment because it was so badly run by the Fish and Wildlife Service? We actually got it taken back to the states for jurisdiction. Grijalva challenged us, and we beat him back on the House floor. If you don't think the votes are there, they are, but you have to teach people. You ought to see me like a crazy man going back and forth whipping votes. I'm good at that stuff. But my point is, time's up. We got to start fighting back.
How do we help?
You can help me with videos. I'll tell you what, I can't get enough of these. Wherever I'm going, people are going. I mean, just if I didn't mention it, Alan Lowenthal and Don Beyer are coming out here because this rocked their world. That drinking water you're seeing there is actually cleaner than what Minnesota actually has on the ground. The cities are all competing to get that water for their drinking water. So they can hardly wait for the mining to get done so they can actually use it. It's like unbelievable. And you've got an administration that's starting to put the pieces together. They're starting to think it through. Here's your problem. I don't hold anything back, by the way. The other problem is the president's 2 kids, Eric and Don Jr. They're causing a problem for Ryan Zinke. The reason being is they like public access to public lands. So they're afraid to turn it back over to states or to mine it. I'm just telling you, you got to know that. But you know what I like? I like to know that because I can go back and teach them. Saying, tell me how is this different? We transferred this to the state. Look at the access issue. Look at how well we did with this.
So, Congressman, on this topic, you know, we've talked about the national monuments that are under review, but we've seen even before the Obama administration abuses of the Antiquities Act. It got to its height during the prior administration. But what is your prognosis and what can we do to facilitate reform of the Antiquities Act, as well as some of these runarounds that we've seen, such as the 20-year withdrawal of land in the northern Arizona Strip?
So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to have the same application of the law that Wyoming and Alaska does. By the way, Wyoming's got the stronger of the two laws. I want that equivocal to all states, which means that in order to take a president before they have a takings in the Antiquities, they would have to consent of this whole state and the local jurisdiction in which that is. So if it's multi-district or multi-county, it has to get permission from both sets of the county. Plain and simple. That's what I want. And to be honest with you, I'm not getting a lot of fire.
We have several companies that are in exploration. ASARCO obviously is an operating project right now. And how many people are you employing right now at Resolution?
So we have 138 employees and about 260 contractors right now. Yeah.
Don?
We're probably about 100 employees and maybe another 75 contractors right now.
Kathy?
I think we're at about 40, we ramped down, but we have somewhere around 200 contractors if I were to look. And if I count the Forest Service, where we have to pay for our permits, it's more than that. So
Another 400.
Yeah, I mean, we do get, I mean, seriously, because we do pay them, we pay for the Forest Service time. That's why
They have to work though, Kathy, but they're not working.
No, I don't have the authority to fire them, I just have to pay them.
And then we have several vendors in here and that rely on the mining. Steve?
Yeah, we supply contractors and mines direct, so it impacts us greatly, just how we perform.
And we have an insurance company here.
And we also rely on the contractors and the mines themselves to provide benefits for.
At aggregate, how many people we have just here in our region, right here in southern Arizona?
Oh, gosh. As an industry, we have,
well over 1,000.
The cement plant is one thing, that's a big, we always think of that as a lot of people, but for every batch plant we have, we probably have 30 people per batch plant. And we've got like 8 or 10 batch plants in Phoenix, we got 3 or 4 down. So every time it's delivered, it's not all about making it, it's about delivering it, and everywhere you look, there's people everywhere.
And Bill, how many people are you employing in the U.S. versus out of the country?
Well, we have about 300 here in Tucson and about 40 or 50 in Chile. But 2/3 of all our jobs are related to some sort of industrial plant or mine. And, you know, most of our years we rely upon a mine expansion or mine construction. And with all the projects out there, whether it's Rosemont, Wildcat, which is now Arizona Metals, Florence and Resolution, there would be a tremendous upsurge in our industry. You know, Amigos has 300 members, which probably represents 50,000 employees. So we have a vibrant industry, but to be honest, if all those projects got cut loose, we would lack from having field construction contractors, because we've lost construction employees in the last 10 years, and some of those construction jobs would not come back. So the sooner we can get 1 or 2 of those started, we'll bring back to the state of Arizona people that left the state 8 or 10, 12 years ago. And so we're all kind of waiting for Congress to change the tax laws, do NAFTA, bring the foreign money back from the U.S. corporations, and fix Obamacare. I mean, we're truly in limbo these days, waiting for our government to do what they promised. And time is going by.
And then we have Florence Copper. How many people do you have down there?
Right now we have 6 employees, but once we start the test facility, it'll be about 40.
How much of your revenue are you having to spend on legal?
All I know is I wish I went to law school.
their town is over $1 million in deficit in Florence.
Yeah.
And they continue to sue
Yeah.
the state after they've already lost 3 times.
Yeah.
And this gets me to it.
Well, you know, that's another point. Equal access to justice has got to have a finite application. So first of all, we've been, in my time in Congress, we've been prohibited to see sue and settle. Justice Department has not released to us. So when I started Congress, any person coming in front of us was asked for 1099, did you benefit from sue and settle or equal access to justice, and how much and where? So it spooked a lot of people coming in there. It's a requirement now. The Justice Department, that's what I was after with Jeff Sessions, was one of the things I'm after. I'm after the documentation of sue and settle. And the reason being is it's not average fees that are actually being ponied up. Everything is specialist this, specialist that. Instead of $185 an hour, it's $400 to $500 an hour. And that's what's racking it up. Okay. Number 2 is the frivolous lawsuit's got to go away. So I believe you should have that opportunity. But if you lose, you pay. We got to get back to what Alaska does. You know, those are those applications with sue and settle. Once again, our problem is I might be able to get something through the House, and this is something we've started to explore, how we're going to move this through from Energy and Commerce and Natural Resources. Once again, our problem is what?
Senate.
There you go. There's our problem. Okay? You saw it with healthcare. I'm going to bridge this. Okay? Because what ends up happening is the Senate's going to have a come to Jesus moment about this. Okay? It's not pretty, folks. I'm just going to tell you. This is not pretty. It's from a dentist. Okay? This is a guy that's pushing buttons in regards to health care. There isn't enough money in this world to fix Obamacare. Let's just get after it. There's not enough. I didn't like what I had before. I don't like this plan. Number 2 is what I heard out of Nevada, Medicaid for All. How's that going to work when physicians are taking 40 cents on the dollar? It doesn't. Okay, Medicare for All. They're getting 60 cents on the dollar. How's that work? They're the big player right now sitting there that no one wants to address. It's losing money hand over fist. If you don't believe me, let me walk you through this. In 1964, if you had a heart attack when Medicare was started, you had glycerin and bed rest. Today, you have that same heart attack. I'm going to put you on a table. I'm going to crack open your chest. I'm going to replace valves, vessels. I'll give you a new heart, and the medications goes with it. We've never kept up with the times. It costs a ton more to do that. So if you can't fix Medicare, then tell me a single payer that works. And don't bring Canada up, by the way. Now you're hearing it from me. I'm bolden about this because it doesn't work. You just saw this little baby in England. That's rationed care, folks. Why do you think the Canucks get all their preventative care up in Canada and they're getting their surgeries down here? We don't like that ramification, but the consequences are there. The Senate had a shitty bill. Point blank had a shitty bill. The House is not great, but here's what it does. The president promised you lower premiums, choice, and rebuilding the marketplace. What the House put together does that. Not in 2 years, not in 4 years, now. You don't get the $900 billion in taxes in Obamacare, you're not getting tax reform. That $900 billion represents 10 percentage points. So if you were being promised a 15% rate, it's now 25. That's how this is all wrapped up. It's a mess. An absolute mess. And it makes me sick that we're making these promises and we make it convenient to talk in red meat saying, oh yeah, repeal and replace. Okay, then tell me what the hell it is. But it's not doing that. And the biggest key to your point is those I want the federal government out of the way. You know how to expand money better than the federal government. They're not here to make money. They're here to waste money. That's the infuriating part of that. And to tell me and the state and the local mining folks and the timber industry that we don't know how to take care of something that we're dependent upon, look at the video. I'm sick of it.
One of the things, as you're talking about sue and settle, we've been in the permitting process for over 10 years. We've got over 400 days of public comment, 43,000 comments have come in on our project, and we're almost done, right?
Yeah.
Then there's the opportunity for litigation,
Yep.
which everybody should have the opportunity to say, we don't like this, we think you've broken the law, whatever. But that ability goes on for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years after we've started. They can sue.
Even longer with
Yeah,
circumstances.
depending on circumstances. Now, I can understand if I'm breaking the rules, or the Forest Service isn't enforcing the rules or something, I can see having that remedy. But that might be something else that, as you have a checklist and you're starting to talk about sue and settle, if I can build a $2 billion plant and then have it shut down 2 years after we get started, and have to spend $50 or $70 million on reclamation because we're shut down, in the meantime, not having known that we were going to actually be shut down because there's an administration or a judge that doesn't like us.
Right.
It's really daunting. I mean, it's a risk you take as a business, and it's calculated risk, and you try to manage that. But it's something to add to your sue and settle list that appears to be really inappropriate. If you don't sue right away, why should you have the ability to hold all your cards until someone spent all of their money?
And that's part of the discussion package in regards to that, as well as the Anti-Deficiency Act. You know, where in the jurisdiction did Congress give that to the agencies? That's why it's so important to understand the Anti-Deficiency Act, because of its implication all the way through reforms.
Thank you.
Just quickly,
Yes.
some advice. Do you have any advice on how to get something through BLM right now? As you know, we've talked to you before. We have an NOA package that's been there 27 months. It's a non-decision-making document that we just need to get through so we can have the public comment on our land exchange, which has been going on 24 years, and we cannot get it through that office.
Yeah. What you do is send it to my office and point me in the right direction. Give me names.
Can I add something?
Yep.
What office is it in? It's in the Acting Assistant Secretary of Land and Minerals.
Yep.
I'm meeting with them Friday
Yeah.
on some other things.
Yeah. So we can bring it up. The quicker you get that to us, they absolutely hate me when I start putting my nose under the covers.
It's a NOA for a land exchange. It's already been approved.
Yeah. No, we're happy to. Unfortunately, it shouldn't take the act of Congress to do some of this stuff, but it's taking an act of Congress. Put me to work.
Thank you.
I like to be the most hated person in Washington, D.C.
How's your blood pressure?
It's actually really low. The structure's not so good. I've had a couple back surgeries, but everything else is perfectly fine. As long as you don't give me some wheat, then I'll go to sleep on you. I mean, to me, this is a fun game. And we're on the line. So we're playing for all the marbles right now. So it's when there's greatest conflict is the greatest opportunity for change. That's when you get this stuff done. But you got to have the ingenuity. You got to know the person. You got to know the people and the time and the event. And if we can do that, boy, there's no end to what we can get done. Are we going to get it all in one swoop? No. No. We lost it incrementally. Some of the stuff we're going to get back incrementally. Okay? But even if I get incrementalism, I want to say, wait a minute, look what I just won. I want to show you that I deserve this and we're responsible for this. So don't take it away. That means I can get most of the rest of it much faster.
The category exclusion. Greg?
Does it exist?
Not for you.
Not for anybody. Once again, all things on the table. You know, we're still looking at it. It's just trying to get enough people to look at the issue. Yep.
I have one more comment. The Arizona National Scenic Trail Forest Service is doing a comprehensive plan. They've just started the scoping process. One of the things on their wish list is they want a mile-wide withdrawal along the trail that you can't develop at all along that area. You can't change the location of the trail. And then they plan on reaching out to the counties to zone out everything else on private property. Have you heard about this? Do you have any comments on that?
I think it's DOA, in my opinion. But that's, particularly western states, some of these states are 60, 70% federal land, and you're asking for more. Once again, a takings clause. You can't do that in the takings. We're going to have that conversation about takings, straight up. So I don't see it happening. I think there's ways to associate it with the roadless rule. I'll give you a circumstance in which the Forest Service up in northeast Arizona, with the Wallow Fire, tried to wall off all these trails. Tom Tidwell, I got a phone call from Apache County Sheriffs. He said, listen, we got Forest Service guys up here putting cement in metal tubes and closing off the roads with metal fences. I said, wonderful. I called Tom Tidwell. I said, Tom, we're going to have a civil war out in northeastern Arizona. He goes, what? I said, oh yeah, your guys are putting up the stakes. My guys are going to come at the middle of the night with their sawing equipment by their headlights and cutting it down. It's a depressed area. You're telling them that they can go get firewood, but then you're prohibiting them from going getting firewood, and we're going to have a holy hell breakout. And by the way, your guys are going to lose because we're better shots than you guys. I had the keys in 24 hours. This is madness, absolute madness. And I'm a believer in federalism, and that's where I hope all of you are. I get the sense you're all there. You know, it's let me take care of my own backyard. What was given to the federal government was only what was given to the federal government. The rest was given to the states.
Speaking of the states, the Governor Ducey or some of his staff had discussed about potentially taking over some of the responsibilities from the Corps of Engineers. Mm-hmm. And that's a very expensive undertaking. Where ideas, where would you go with this? How would you advise the process?
I think it's a great idea that we can delineate projects. First of all, which one has a federal nexus, which one has a state nexus. You know, like Lower Santa Cruz. You know, this is an important aspect. You guys down here get flooded out by the Lower Santa Cruz when they get flooding in Mexico, so why not control it? Oh, by the way, Mexico is going to pay their 50% on it. Interesting. A project that's mutually helpful to both countries and to our state. That seems like it's a win-win. And there's another one called Nogales Wastewater. They're high ground, we're low ground. How about we start looking at that one? Once again, mutual interest, they're going to pay half of the bill. Seems like we ought to be concentrating on some of those things. But I think delineating those things that the state can do best and those that the federal nexus is very important, I think has to move forward. Last but not least, once again, if we're talking about a federal project, I want a fair wage for a fair job that's fair to the taxpayer. Right now, I'm not getting that in the prevailing wage. I want to be allowing everybody to compete for those packages. Everybody. Then you don't depend on Congress to set those. You, the industry, take care of those by fair and transparent wages. Just a thought. Yes?
Representative, I'm also a city council member from Nogales, and IBWC wants to pass on all that cost to the local government, so they don't see it 50-50 either.
No, but it's interesting when you start when we're talking about NAFTA. See, I'm a businessman, and so the last time I looked, no contract is not renegotiated at least by 5 years. Everything is 5 years or under. NAFTA hasn't been renegotiated in 23 years. And there's plenty of things both sides are doing that could be done better. But it's also calling leverage. So I got these two projects sitting here. And the Army Corps of Engineers on Lower Santa Cruz had shipped that off to Chicago. It's now being recalled back to Los Angeles. I wonder if somebody made an impact with the administration. So when you're doing that, those are the opportunities you say, wait a minute, we got a couple projects here that are instrumental on both sides. And it can be done, okay? Nogales is a favorite of mine. I was actually asked to come in and intervene and help out with a banking issue. Okay? Not my wheelhouse, we turned around and learned about the banking industry and found out it was about Operation Choke Point. So we went to FDIC and said, hey, listen, we met with all the townspeople and said, listen, lack of banking, lack of credit, we got to open this baby up. All it took was us speaking on their behalf to the FDIC for transparency and some flexibility. Bank One moved back, or Chase Bank moved back in, and Bank One Yuma moved back in. Wow. This isn't rocket science. Yeah, go ahead.
That brings up the following on that track. Every time we've run into issues with permitting and we go to our congressional delegation, we get killed by the agencies because they then, if we thought it was slow before, it's like dead stop at that point. The explanation we always get back is, well, you went to Congress, so our duty now is to stop all activity on your permit because we now got to respond to this congressional inquiry. So would you rather have us working on your application or deal with this congressional inquiry? So in other words, stop going to Congress.
Oh, but Greg, I'd love you to send me that, because I'll go directly to the agency and say, excuse me, what the hell did you send this for? Tell me what part of your budget you're allowing to do this inquiry. We're here on customer service on behalf of the constituency back home. So there should be no interruption. In fact, you better be fast tracking this. Otherwise, who's your boss?
Well, that's directly from Jim Upchurch.
No. But my point is, I go into people and say, wait a minute, if I don't get my right answer, I ask them who their boss is and go right above their head. But once again, we haven't had an institution where actually people lost their job. We just had 55 of them. And we had a number of folks in the VA that lost it as well because of Congress's increased role and one of the bills they actually did pass and sign into law. There were a number of people who should have never been in the VA that are now no longer in the VA. But once somebody's job is in jeopardy, it changes a little bit. I can tell you this right now. My dealings with Mr. Tuggle. Mr. Tuggle violated the law in Lake Havasu. Point blank, plain as day. I got all the goods on it. I got all the emails and FOIA requests by residents. Well, you don't think that was coordinated? He had nothing to say. He could beat down the path fast enough to me because he said, this was his comment to me, we can't take this categorical exclusion away overnight. I said, you applied it overnight to begin with. All it takes is a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen for permanency. He didn't like I told him, I said, you know, time's ticking, so it's up to you. And I said, I represent the people back home, you don't. I see you as an opportunity to get somebody else in here who will do the job right. You know, he doesn't like that, but you know what? You hired me for a job. And we all ought to be doing that. They work at our pleasure. I'm sorry, but they work at our pleasure.
Why is it we're having so much issue then with getting I guess, Congress as a whole to come together and understand the difference between politics and rules? I mean, what is it going to take? Because your voice is great, but then on the other side of this aisle, I've got a congressman down here in southern Arizona who would rather, you know, tip a beer with his cronies and doesn't frankly give a damn how many people we may or may not employ.
Yeah.
How do we get that side to motivate, and what is it going to take for Senate to understand the realities of what's going on?
Okay, that's a great question. There are plenty of things that we can work on together. So if you've noticed some of my water policy, that person that shows up is one of the most aggressive liberal people in California. His name is Jared Huffman. Everybody looks at me on my side and goes, how in the hell are you doing that? I said, guess what? It just got passed, didn't it? It's my job to go find somebody that agrees with me in part and to pick their brain how to make that better. I didn't hurt his principles. He didn't ask me to hurt my principles. But it also means you got to start calling these people out. I think you saw the exchange between me and Mr. Grijalva. It's not going to get any better. He's going to lose and I'm going to win. Point blank.
Can we get that on videotape?
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you. I'm tired of this. It's nothing personal about him, but it's about the way that he goes about the business. And that's why I want to make sure that I'm representing those people, because those people are speaking up. That's why I want you to speak up on behalf of that. So when I'm on a hearing, I'm not the windbag politician. I don't get up there and say, well, this is how I feel, and I write the script. No. Put your attention to the monitor and listen to the people back home. They're going to tell you all about it because they have to live with this crap. Those are the opportunities that we have. Number two is, if you're going to shake that tree, you better shake me out. There ain't no way in hell Grijalva's going to shake me out. No way in hell. But it's up to me to explain to people why he's wrong. And if it means that he's in collusion with those groups, interesting how maps mirror each other and how certain things come from that office in CBD. All of a sudden, we see something come across the congressional lines upon those. I'm sorry. I'm going to call him out. What you don't hear is that there's a lot in Congress actually happening that is very collegial. I gave you an example of Alan Lowenthal. I like the man. He and I disagree on a lot of things. But you know what? I can sit down and talk to Alan over and over again. And I got him to come out here. He's going to walk a mile in our moccasins. It's going to be great for him to be taught about mining. And we're going to win him over. And when we win him over, he's going to win others over. So I think there's opportunity a gash here. Last but not least, remember in the last 4 terms, over 80% of Congress has turned over. Okay? A lot of these people are business people. They've never dealt with mining. This is abstract to them, or timber harvest. They don't know. So it's a golden opportunity to have a teaching moment. It takes the time, but once you take the time, you got a friend for life, because they're going to come back to you and go, hey, you explained it this way. Help me get through this next process. And then the third prospect is, sometimes when we carry legislation, it's maybe not me. It may be my issue, but it's somebody else that carries the water better for me. And I can help steer them along that way. One of the nicest things that has happened to me in the last 3 years is I've had about 13 offices that have come to me and say, listen, you seem to be able to get anything you want passed in an amendment or a bill, and leadership hates your guts. So what's your mojo? And it's work. It's just really work. You get to the staff, you explain it to the staff, you go to the membership, you present it to them why it's a benefit to them. Walk away. Let them digest it. Come back again. Say, I gave you some time. What did you think about that? Can I answer any questions? Persistence, persistence, persistence. And it's going on both sides, by the way. There's Republican issues and there's Democratic issues. If we can feign away from the stuff that sells TV ratings and newspaper sales, there's other things going on, and it's coming along just fine. The problem is leadership on both sides.
But if I can bring up one of the other vexing issues that we have, and that's the ozone standards.
Mm-hmm.
So we, Administrator Pruitt had put a delay in place, but out of this threat of lawsuits from the environmental NGOs, that delay has now been lifted. So we've got these standards coming through that we're going to have to respond to. And as you probably know, the state can't fully control the dust in our natural environment. We don't regulate mobile sources for the most part, and we're looking at a situation where we could be in serious non-attainment, and potentially the whole state could be affected by this. So just interested in your thoughts on whether there's any kind of path out of this, given the confluence of events that have occurred around it.
So this is another one of those aspects that is being looked at CRA, okay? Because it bypasses the litigation, putting something into effect and allowing Congress to come up with a Congressional Review Act and kill it. Once again, it's something that we got to learn what tools we have in the toolbox. Not only does it kill it, it puts a roadblock onto it so they can't go that way again. They have to go completely different around it. once again, you know, some of these, the clean power rule, the regional haze, folks, this was what, when I ran about NGS, I was complaining to everybody about. Here it comes. And you know what? Who's taking a big hit? Tribal entities. Hopi and Navajo are going to get their rear ends handed to them. 90% of the money in the Hopi comes from Navajo Generating Station, from the mine and from Navajo Generating Station. Yeah. Navajo, about 60%, right? These are all the high-paying jobs. Folks, a bailout's not coming for the tribe. Let me repeat that. There's no bailout coming up for the tribe. So that's pretty an important aspect up there, is how do they do this? Going back to infrastructure, some of the things we've proposed to the nation, asking for a right-of-way to I-40 rail so that you can sell your coal overseas. Start mixing it with wood pellets for incinerary biofuels. Burns hotter, burns cleaner. Pretty interesting mix when you're using some wood products with coal. So there's some opportunities here. But also, when you start looking at the regional haze issue and the ozone standards, what are some of those things that can be backed off based upon tribal interest as well? Because Zinke is actually looking at the self-determination application to minerals and water. It's a touchy issue. I'm just going to talk to you. It's a two-edged sword, okay? So, but it is a card that they're looking at. Okay? And by the way, you did make a comment about trying to get Zinke out here. Zinke said he'll come out here. I think there's one caveat. So we got something to show, like in March, particularly when it's nice and cold back east. We got a captive audience. Now that we've done Alaska, how about something in Arizona? We get these weeks. What they do on our schedule is we work 3 on or 4 on, and it's like 4 or 5 days on, and we get this week off. Plenty of members go across the seas. How about we have a week in Arizona? Where what we do is we teach them about our agriculture, we teach about our trade, teach about our mining industry, teach about our water. I mean, for God's sakes, I would have been drinking whiskey the whole time here because water's worth, you know, for fighting over. And give them the morning to have to go out in different shuttles. Let them come back, let them enjoy a round of golf. Have a dinner where we actually sit down and allow everybody to find out and debrief what they saw that day. And the last 3 days of that trip, we go down the Grand Canyon to teach them about what water is all about in Arizona. They're never going to forget it. Ryan Zinke said, you do that, I'll be there the whole time. He said there he'd be in the forest, he'll be there. This is a guy wanting to get there. If we've got the mojo and teaching him by video what it means to us and convey that, he'll get here.
You know, our website, we have, over the last 5 years, we've done a mining appreciation event.
Mm-hmm.
Our website has videos of some of the events. And last year we did a program of women in mining,
Mm-hmm.
co-chaired by Miss Arnold and Dr. Mary Polton,
Mm-hmm.
who has unfortunately left our region for cooler weather. But our website provides your office and your staff with plenty of information for people that can go in there, look at videos,
Mm-hmm.
talk about mining. But the Women in Mining event really puts a lot of historical understanding of the region and how it affects us. And if you're here in February, we're going to have a good old-fashioned party next year. We're going to just have a good old-fashioned party for Celebrate Women in Mining, or the mining industry as a whole, aggregate, vendors, and everybody else. So we'd love to have you come out and join us.
Love to be.
And we do it in February. If we need to move it to March and have Mr. Zinke come out here, we can do that too. So I'll coordinate with Penny, but because, and the one thing about this industry, everybody out here, just good old-fashioned people, want to go to work hard, and enjoy the fruits of their labors. And if we can help you convey that message to DC, I'll jump on a plane if need be. We'll come out there and do the things that are necessary, because people just don't understand. We're talking about the economic impacts. These are projects that aren't even up and running yet.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Congress or if the EPA and the permitting process would reduce 30% the time taken to get this stuff done? How much more money would be in the national economy to build infrastructure?
Education.
Great. And you know what this industry does? It doesn't jockey for jobs, it creates careers.
Right.
One career is equivalent to 3 to 4 jobs.
Yep.
For people to enter in and start at the bottom and work their way up into a career. And that's the message that if I can convey anything to you and to your people there in DC and to your audience, because that, we talk about education, we talk about how many mining companies here provide education opportunities for your employees. Manuel, Kathy, you know, Tom, these people help educate people.
Yeah.
And that's what the mining industry has not been able to get through to the bureaucrats as well as Congress, if you will. And if you can help us and you need us to bring a caravan, sign me up.
Well, I will tell you, I don't think it's sending a caravan back there, because once you enter the bubble, that's a strange bubble. That's why I'm on the last plane there and the first plane out of there. It needs to be the other way around. That's why I'm trying to get people to come back out here, because once again, they serve the people. And that's kind of what we're missing back in DC. You know, and it's also hard when you have leadership on both sides that stymie stuff. Well, something happened a couple of years ago where a sitting speaker was ousted. May not be the first time. There may be stuff around the corner. Once again, I serve at the pleasure of you. Leadership serves at the pleasure of me and you. It's been just back asswards lately. And both sides have been doing it. We've been going off track a long, long time. And now we're realizing where we're at, where our backs are against the wall. This industry isn't just what you say it is, it's the core building blocks of a country. Real wealth comes from mining. If we don't have that, I mean, the guy on the guy who's getting the most flack is the guy talking about cell phones. Because everybody that this video has been seen, kids are going like, what's in the cell phone? He's talking about the crystal, he's talking about the rare earths, he's talking about, they're like, what the heck? And they're explaining it. You talk about geospatial. So when we were in Norway, it was revealed to us that in the Arctic Sea, they've now found nodules of free floating or free accumulations of rare earths. They're nodules. So now what they're doing is they're looking at mapping, and how do we look at more increased mapping to have better affinity to find those. And it also relays discoveries for oil, gas, and other minerals. So there's a whole nother opportunity, maybe if we use the budget to drive money for more mapping from geospatial aspects. There's a whole nother venue we haven't even talked about by driving money into certain projects. All it takes is an amendment.
Well, to the mapping thing, the Arizona Geological Survey, the late Dr. Allison, he created a website. The Arizona AGS website has a plethora of information to identify exactly what you're talking about, and it's free, and we can build on stuff like that, and he's coordinated with the National Geological Survey. On that information, a lot of it's already there for us to be able to use and access. So, you know, we have time with the congressman for 3 hours, but you know what? If you're set, you just want to hang out and mingle a little bit and just sort of enjoy the rest of our afternoon together and just give people a chance to get to know you better.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to sit down and talk with me. If you're looking at videos, I make a suggestion. Don't make the video for you. Go ask a teenager. You know, to give you an example, my staff has been stymieing because I want to use the Lorax. So we're trying to figure out how to get around. I don't know, do you know who the Lorax is? Okay. Well, the Lorax represents the environment. And right now, the trees are killing the environment. Okay, so the Lorax has been those identified people. But I mean, use some shock factor. You know, I would take a cell phone and say, where's the cell phone come? There's some out there, but they need to have more shock. because kids need to know where they come from. Also the military, the importance of these, any mineral for that matter, in our military is now becoming very strategic. That's why I brought up Ned Manula, because he is now correlating that through USGS and the military as to how dependent we are overseas now with our minerals. It is a national security issue, big time, okay? And the last time I looked, we tend to do things, for the most part, better than anybody else in the world. So why wouldn't we want to bring some of those supporting jobs like smeltering back? It was an interesting conversation up in the Fort Knox mine up in Alaska when people started asking about their smeltering process because they make their own bars right there. You know, and people are like, well, how many more do we have of those in the United States outside Alaska? There's 3. 1 copper smelter in Utah and 2 here in Arizona. Those are great paying jobs. Great paying jobs. And by the way, last time I looked, we do them a lot better than anybody else does in the world. That's not something I want to shy away from.
So Congressman, just so you know, in that booklet I gave you, we addressed exactly some of the things you were saying, the cell phone, the military application, the copper and some other minerals, and we don't want it to just be in that book. We're starting a process of creating kind of some individual infographics on some of these big topics and pushing them out through our social media channels. So, you know, our goal is certainly just to get that information out as broadly as possible in a way that people of all generations will respond to just crisp and clear, and really make that point that these minerals are necessary to the lives we all enjoy. And you know, sometimes people don't realize also that it's, you know, renewable energy, for example, and even electric cars require so much more copper than what we've seen in the past.
Well, any type of buy you can get to the younger generation. They've been told something, and if it's not correct, they keep coming back to ask you why. So if you can ask them to do that, I will tell you a story about my son. So my son's very, very smart. So I have had this idea on video for quite some time. My staff has to live with me, and I live outside the boxes. And so I talked to my chief of staff about the video and fast-moving, very, because I went to a movie theater with my son, to a movie I had no inkling to watch at all. But what I did is I turned around in my chair and started watching what visually captured them. It was fast things that kind of made real clicking. So you were kind of left hanging. And so Tom, on his own, built a video over the weekend, that weekend. A little long, about 4 minutes. And every 10 seconds there was new pictures. No, they were all pictures. Some provocative music, no printed words, just. So I looked at it and I watched it several times. So I thought, let's experiment. So I took it home and I said, hey Gaston, I want you to watch this. So Gaston goes, and it's like a half an hour, a little after a half an hour later, and he goes, Dad, you got to tell me about this video. I've watched it now 10 times. So what do you think it is? It was all about the Constitution. You know that kid went back and read the Federalist Papers? It does work. He's intoxicated. And this kid still to this day will remind me, I just saw what you posted. Does that qualify under federalism? So I do answer to a higher God. but my point is think outside the box, because when you ask and incorporate somebody else's creativity, particularly what kids do, they have no boundaries. You get them for forever. So I think you're doing a great thing. So count me as one of your helpers.
And well.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you.
But you brought a very good point at the end. All the mines, the new mines, the exploration, everything that we do from here on, we go to some other countries. Because we don't have the numbers.
Yes.
And that's a very sad thing. Plus, it's a national security issue.
Yep.
All the minerals and metals will be processed either in Europe, Croatia, not here.
That's right.
So something has to happen if we want to control our future.
Yeah. Well, thanks for teaching me. That's what I got to tell you. I'm living proof that you can teach an old dog and a dentist a new trick.
What would be the viability, if at all, to get another smelter here in the U.S.?
I think it's a golden possibility. Once again, you know, how do you dream, where do you dream, and how are you going to do it together?
The amount of permitting.
I don't have money or time to do it, right? I mean, by the time you were to decide to get one done, it would take you 15 years, and you can't invest in something over 15 years. It takes, you just can't. As a business, you have to be able to have some certainty, look forward, figure out what your investment strategy is going to be, your development strategy, and your financing strategy. And if it takes you 15 years and changes and delays and agencies that don't care and things get changed because they want to move things around like they're building blocks, you can't do it. And a
Changes
smelter,
in agency personnel,
yeah,
different ideas,
yeah,
different
different
views.
ideas. But a smelter, as you're looking at all the ramifications, and they're starting to require that even gas companies look up and down the chain, and down the chain, where is your gas going to be used, and how much is that going to impact the environment? I mean, where does it end? I mean, so I think, I don't believe you'll ever see another smelter in the United States. If we can't permit a mining facility that is one of the cleanest in the world, how in the heck would we ever be able to permit a smelter?
So let me ask you a question. So have you been playing offense or defense lately?
I've been playing offense for 10 years, and I'm a little tired.
I actually think you're playing defense.
I think we play a lot of defense.
Yeah.
But with the agencies, we've developed partnerships, and I'm part of the reason that Don can't get his work done. I mean, I'll admit it. We take out most of the forest resources down.
But answering that one,
Yeah.
in the smelting side, we're not playing anything.
No, there's no.
Either
nothing.
defense or nothing. We have 3 smelters in the country, copper smelter, that's it.
Yeah.
We're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
But that's exactly the point. It's not, we're not playing anything.
No.
No, but you know, if you see the new technologies with the smelters, I never saw a transfer clean.
Oh,
They reuse everything that is produced in the smelters in Europe or in Asia. So it's like, why do you know one is smelter? That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that comes back to my point, is you're at a kind of an interesting point in time, you know, where now people are starting to realize, I mean, I look at my colleagues starting to realize the point in time in which they are. You can't just say no. It's what's it going to take to get to yes? And you either believed in peer review science or you don't. And so it seems like to me, if I'm a negotiator, I'm asking for the world, and I'll settle for a little bit less. And with due respect, okay, let's look at the NAFTA issue, okay? As anybody will say in any business, 5 years maximum, you renegotiate a deal. So what did the guy say? Tariff. He went clean out here. What did he do? He brought people directly to the table. Changed the whole dynamics of the game. That's not where he's going, but he drove you to the table because of that word. So there's things we can learn about how we negotiate and how that we actually go on offense at the same time going for defense. And what's it going to take to be yes? That means the Forest Service, the BLM, that's the same answer or question we need to ask them. What's it going to take to be yes? The other thing that we have to do is be aggressive with these groups. Okay, so the Mexican gray wolf is a great idea. What's it going to take to be yes? Well, you're mismanaging that population. The state can do it better. And we won that argument. So I think we ought to be asking for something more than what we're talking about right now, and we're talking about compliance. I want more than that. I want to see that bureaucrat on the other side saying, wait a minute, justify that action with me. I watched Lake Havasu. This is an amazing story, okay? And I don't know if you know my story. So my folks, I lived in Pinedale, Wyoming, where the Green River starts, okay? The Nuclear Energy Commission decided that there was an oil shale bed, very, very profitable, a lot of oil reserves in there. And they had this crazy idea that they were going to take and drill a rig and take a nuclear bomb and detonate it in this oil shale, and all the oil would pool up and then they get to it. Little did they know that they're in the Yellowstone caldera, okay, that activating all this might just end up wiping out the United States. Oh, by the way, the Green River flows south, the Hoback flows north, so you're on a fault plane. So maybe the Green ends up going north instead of south. Boy, the Colorado and Arizona would look a lot different than that. I watched a community very similar to that, less than 1,000 people go in activity. And they kicked their butt. There were 6 bureaucrats lost their jobs. Okay? I translate that to today into Lake Havasu. So we had a group of people go to the refuge manager and say, wait a minute, I need to canoe. We don't want boats on here, motorized boats. The refuge manager goes, well, in the email we have this. I don't have the prerogative to determine this without going through a full NEPA process, going through the science. And they did anyway. All of a sudden, 2 days before Memorial Day, up come these restrictions. They put these buoys up, say, no boats in here, no wake zones, da-da-da-da-da. This is where kids learned how to water ski. Lake Havasu, the last time I looked on the whole aspect of the Colorado, was built for recreation. Okay? Boy, they got ticked off. They kept asking questions. Why did you do this? Why are you allowing this to do this? Well, because we can. Well, it's a violation of the law. I had Mr. Tuggle in my office. They weren't even going to have a hearing in Lake Havasu. We got it. He was going to go to the Hampton Inn. I go, oh, you're going to lead a lot more people than that. Oh, no, they won't show up. He gets a gymnasium. We pack it, standing room only. Over 1,000 people show up. Oh, by the way, not just from Arizona. The majority were from California. They're from Nevada, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona. You know what they did to Mr. Tuggle? He tried to show him a propaganda video. They shouted him down. I watched a group take control of their world. It wasn't me, I played a part in it. It was them. And they wouldn't let it go. So I want to think outside that box. I think you got some good people in Ryan Zinke. I think Mr. Perdue is another good person. I think Mr. Pruitt is a good guy. But I also think we also have to empower Congress to be good people too. That find out that they can be part of the solution and not part of the problem. But I think it's how we go about doing that, if that makes sense. So I think the first thing that you can do is contact your senators to say, hey, listen, we need to improve the process for making sure people are pushed through the process appropriately. I want them done right, okay? About the process in the Senate. Number 2 is get on the budget. Hold bureaucrats accountable, because that's your plenary power. If they don't have the money, they can't do it. I'll give you an example. I was responsible for cutting the IRS $353 million from their enforcement arm. When that was implemented, guess who I heard for first? IRS. You know what? But I had them over our barrel saying, what, you're going to back off now. Here's the restrictions you can't do this on. You got to start following the law like everybody else. So it gives you a point of leverage. I don't think we take advantage of that often enough. Oh, yeah. So the buoys came down, and they had a big celebration. And by the way, they thought about doing it again. I didn't even have to respond. The whole area responded, so the hell you are. And a little kid that started the whole thing, because we got a thing from Ryder's mom. He's a disabled kid that learned how to ride there, is now going back there. And we celebrated the fact that he got to go back to that area in the refuge. And if they want to do something, follow the law. This country has become a lawbreaker. And the biggest culprit has been the Department of Justice, not just Democrat, Republican too. We pick and choose the laws we want to enforce. If you don't like the laws, go back to Congress and have them rewritten. The other thing that's passed is called the REINS Act. That means that any rule and regulation that has an implied or a cumulative effect of $50 million has to come before Congress to get certified, that they can actually apply it. What a great restriction that is. That means every rule is coming in front of Congress again. That's a living outside the box issue. So there's lots of things I think we can do. We limit ourselves with our ingenuity. Yep.
You mentioned the confirmation sitting in the Senate. Can those not be shut through by executive order?
Well, if we were in recess, yes, we could. Yes, the president could, but they chose to go in for pro forma, tick for tack.
You're not in recess now?
The House is in. We're actually in pro forma.
Oh.
Yep. So, once again, I mean, the previous administration was looking for the pro forma. If you remember the National Labor Board, President Obama put some people on there. We were still in pro forma, and they were removed by the Supreme Court. Okay, if it applies to him, it still applies to this president. That's one thing we got to get back. We've been giving the executive branch more power at the expense of the legislative and judicial branches since Wilson, if not solidly Roosevelt. And both sides have been doing it, culminating with an environment we see today in Congress capitulating to what the administration wants. That's not what the Constitution gives us power. We're three equal branches, judicial, legislative, and executive. And who was the group that the framers worried about the most? The executive branch. And that's where our problems are right now.
But did Congress has that capitulation evolved out of laziness or a scapegoat backdoor?
Both and all. There were times that we needed to stand up and fight, and we chose not to. Go ahead.
You also mentioned the IRS, and I'm wondering why the director is still in his position. Why isn't he even issued?
If you haven't gathered, it's really hard to get rid of a federal employee or somebody in a position. You know, we've now started seeing some stepping. We see in the IRS or the Veterans Administration, and now we saw senior executive officers lose their jobs in Interior, whether it be Fish Wildlife Service, Forest Service, or BLM. Okay, but you also have to have the facts. So if you'll remember back February, March, when did I write that letter? I think March. I'm going to be safe in March. I advised the administration that we did not have the information on the IRS. The prerogative of the administration is actually to do an in-depth investigation of the IRS, fast and furious. There's a number of things that have to be looked at. The unmasking of American citizens. Okay? I mean, that's your personal property. That's your personal privileges. That's you. And the government was spying. Not just a couple hundred. It may be thousands. Well, we know it's thousands. Okay? That's a direct violation. You as a citizen are afforded those that if they're under investigation, they need to supply you with a warrant. And they didn't. So we informed the administration and Mr. Sessions that they had the prerogative and the power to have special prosecutors provided to do an in-depth evaluation and investigation, and at very least to comply with Congress's records and provide us the records. Do you know what Mr. Sessions' comment was? Be happy to comply when I get more people. I got people here that will not comply with that order. I can't do anything without knowing where they violated the law. I got some inklings, but I don't have the facts. Pretty frustrating on government oversight. Very fun committee, though. I've been in some really heated meetings. I can tell you that, pretty darn heated. But I think I got a quote. I think I got it on this phone. Let me see if I've got it for you, because I think it epitomizes what you're coming back to.
And while you're looking at that, there's been no decision on CERCLA.
Yeah, that's, we were hoping that there was something
Yeah,
coming through.
Not yet. Non-action option is expected soon.
Yeah.
Jeff just called.
Yeah, that was that point I was making on what they're trying to figure out which way to go.
Yeah. No action.
So I actually even tried to get something that maybe I could break to you, but didn't work to my benefit. I didn't. The quote I'm looking for is Brandeis. Is my iPad, did he have my iPad around? Rick,
I'm sorry, sir.
my iPad, is it here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you bring it out, it's definitely on that one. But it's about the rule of law. And I think it epitomizes your comment in regards to government and rule breaking. Take me just a second. Yeah, church. I have the most boring stuff to look at here. US code this, US code that. As former Supreme Court Justice, Associate Justice Louis Brandeis said, in a government of laws, the existence of the government will be imperiled if it fails to observe the law scrupulously. If the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for the law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy. Here's your sign. You may not like the law, but go change the law the right way. Okay.
Well, we go around the room as we close down here a little bit. Stacy, do you have any last minute ideas, thoughts, or questions?
No, I think we covered everything.
I think it's been an amazing opportunity here. Andrew?
I appreciate all the support you've provided for us as an industry, and I know you said to send you videos. There must be more we can do as an industry for teaching motorists as you described them. How do you think we actually do more of that and teach people ourselves more proactively? Apart from getting the teenagers into.
You know, one of the biggest impacts I've got is going down into that first shaft and that bullet and watching that dot called the sky go away. Go. I just think that's amazing. And we may think it's mundane, but it's spectacular to people. You know, the Golden Vortex now has got a geology program up in Bullhead City, and the kids are vibrant. They love it. But I mean, we got to get them away from this. But we can use this to get them away from this. You know, so I think that's just me.
Yeah, no, nothing else. Really informative. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being here and being as candid. Yeah, we've met twice. We were in your office last year, maybe, and enjoyed it then. Enjoyed it more now because I normally avoid these things like the plague. And not because I don't enjoy the interaction. So many times I feel it's just lip service. And I understand. And my thought with you is it's not just that. And we're seeing results from that. And you know, we're here to help you as much as you are to us because it's an American thing, right? Yep. And our government does not understand activity versus achievement. And that is the biggest issue we face. And so any way we can combat that, we're here. You know, we do have some resources. Technically, you're not going to be looking for me for anything because I can't help you, but we do have some people that can help you out. And we're happy to do that. But I do appreciate you being here and your candor. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
I just want to thank you. The reason we don't let them go to a lot of these meetings because we can't control them.
I sometimes say what's on my mind. Doesn't always work out for me.
Well, and I want to echo what Donna said so well. I appreciate your time today because I know it is valuable when you're out of session. And my biggest beef is NEPA, and how are we gonna actually look at it, reform it, manage it? And we have a great opportunity. The former director of ADPQ, who was the chief of operations for our governor, is now the chief of operations at EPA, and he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so if he gets room to run and can actually turn it around and actually define the customers as being the people who need the permits, it would be astounding, because it would be a whole different ballgame for all of us. So anything we can do to support you or help with that, please let us know.
You know what else I do with that?
Mhm.
Is tell him that. Remind him.
Okay?
Sometimes what happens when you get in the bureaucracy, you lose yourself.
Yeah,
Don't let him forget it.
will do. Thank you.
About 6 months ago, I heard Pat Marin, who's the business unit manager for Hudbay Minerals, say something about the permitting process and opening mines in general. He said, we just want to know what the rules are.
Yep.
And if we know what the rules are, you know, we can act accordingly. But part of that is just the time involved, and the rules need to include some kind of start and end date. And I think with that, you know, everyone will be able to plan and decide whether or not to go forward. And, I appreciate you coming down here and spending this time with us. Thank you.
Robin?
Just thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We appreciate it.
Mark, you haven't said a word all day.
Soaking it all in. But I want to echo what everybody's saying. So I really appreciate the opportunity to interface.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting our industry.
I echo that. I really think you have a great staff to work with. We really appreciate, you know, all the work that Penny and Jeff Small and Trevor do for you.
Yeah.
They're really responsive, and I always say you're one of the biggest champions that we have for the mining industry, and wish that some of the other members of the congressional delegation were as good as you are. So really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad you picked that out because I'm a businessman. I hire people smarter than me. That way the dummy in the group looks good.
We always appreciate your support and championing. I'm encouraged to hear your support for infrastructure, and I think you've really, you know, come a long way, and will be a help when we can get that over the finish line.
Thank you, Congressman, for today. And again, to echo what Ginevra said, I enjoyed working with your staff. Jeff has been top-notch, and really appreciate the work that you guys do for us. And if there's anything we can do for you, just reach out.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sarah?
Thank you. I guess I'm probably all looking forward to what will happen next March and getting right people educated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Congressman, because I know from talking to you in the past, you truly listen and you act on what you act on what you think is right. And if we just had more of you in the Senate, like you, this country would be better. Personally, I feel like the greatest threat to our country and our country's future is not North Korea or Islamophobic.
Yes.
It's lazy, arrogant, no-good federal employees who violate their own rules. They violate federal law, they violate the Constitution, and they waste taxpayer money. And we need a way to fire them.
Yep.
Period. Like similar to the VA accountability, only across all federal agency swamps.
Don't get me started. I'd also like to express my thanks for you coming down, your support of the industry. I have to go to Sacramento a lot, believe me, this is, you hear a completely different thing
Yeah.
there. I guess one thing I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about is, you touched on tax reform a couple times, and
Yeah.
to our industry, the depletion allowance is critical.
Yeah.
And that's, we all want to have a simplified tax code and a lower rate, but if the depletion allowance is lost, and you know, that's a significant bunch of that reduced tax rate, which just nets out to zero for us. And NAM and Apple, those guys don't care about depletion, but for our industry, that's a key part.
And part
part of that, I gave you some nebulous answers, and the reason being is we hear these theoretical rates, but we don't know what the chairman is actually holding in his sock of exemptions. We as members of Congress still don't know that.
We ran the calculations, and for us, it's a 5% tax rate cut would wash out depletion. We lost that, so we ended up nothing. Zero.
Bonnie?
This is great. Thank you for taking the time. We had the PR during August and how many commissions we had. So this is really good.
You're welcome.
Thank
And here we go. I am the rainmaker.
Thanks for coming. It's great seeing you.
It is, Tom. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming down the whole day to Southern Arizona. And obviously, anything Bill and I can do for you, we really want to support you.
I appreciate it.
You're doing amazingly well, being up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Well, she controls my schedule, so that'll tell you.
Yeah, it was 3 a.m.
It was 3 a.m. you guys got up?
Yeah, it was. So we're on, I said, I don't drink coffee, but I told my chief of staff, oh, I'm finding the nearest Starbucks if this goes on too much longer. Right?
We just want to thank you for coming down, and I hope some of your enthusiasm to get the job done wears off on other people in Washington, so please hang in there.
Oh, we look forward to the continued partnership, and I know 2 other people have said it, but your staff, both locally and DC, are just some of the best. They're not only responsive, but they're proactive in reaching out to us for all sorts of issues. And we'll be sure to follow up on several of the things that we discussed today, and just appreciate your leadership on so many issues that are of critical importance to our industry and the state's economy overall.
Great. I'm going to answer you. Are you familiar with Sun Tzu?
Yeah.
The Art of War?
Oh.
That's my #1 book. And the enemy is not the bureaucrats. The enemy is me. I look in the mirror and the enemy is me. There's a lot of things we could have done, but we chose not to do to find ourselves in this position we are today. And so the enemy is really us. I control my destiny. And I hope all you do the same thing. But in Sun Tzu, the minimum requirement is that before I go to war, whether it be a person or an issue, I look in the mirror, I inventory my strengths and my weaknesses. I look at my adversary and look at their strengths and weaknesses. I never play to their strengths, I always play to their weaknesses. Anybody that's followed those minimum requirements has never lost. Never. So we allow this to happen on our accord. Time's up. Time's up. Folks, it is dismal. It's $20 trillion in debt. It's not artificial money, it's real money. And you're the solution of real wealth. That's how, I mean, look at your payroll. They said it. You know, the dessert is tourism. You like it, you love it, it feels good, but you can't afford to pay the bills with it. So I think we got a great story, and your voice is as powerful as mine. Good news, Western Caucus now is very active. One of the things we thought about is I inherited it with 40 members, and it didn't meet here, there, or anywhere. So now it meets once a month with members. We provide them a lunch. And it's amazing what happens when you get people eating. You can turn anything, okay? And then having collaboration with Ryan Zinke and Sonny Perdue and Administrator Pruitt, and then Secretary Perry. It really is intoxicating. And the other part, like as I get, tell the administrator that they left at ADEQ, is some members don't know anything about this, but when they succeed, go tell them about it. Say, thank you, we saw you. It's appreciative. Then you got them for life. So I just tell you, thank you for giving me the time. Yours is as valuable as mine. So thanks.
Well, first of all, on behalf of Bill and I and SABC, thanks for coming down here and doing this again. And we did this 2 years ago, and it's still one of the things people talk about. And you're consistent. As an old cowboy used to tell me, don't worry about the mule, just keep loading the wagon. And your wagon is full, and God bless you.
Yeah.
And keep us in mind, and thank you for being
You're welcome.
here. It's a
You're
big
welcome.
round.
Thank you. And don't be afraid to use your delegation to their strengths. Do not be afraid.
Take care.
Wow.